Hello and welcome to A Cat in the Garden. It is insanely 70 something degrees today, which is nuts because this is my update video for after our crazy freeze. It's also going to be our January garden tour because I haven't done that yet. So we're going to go through the whole garden, go through what I did right, what failed, what survived, all of those good things, and just kind of give a little update on the garden as a whole. And I'm just happy that we're over it. We are officially over that freeze. There are no freezing temps on the horizon in my 10-day forecast, which I'm loving. So it is January 29th today. So right at the end of the month and into February, we've got great weather ahead. Our last frost date is surprisingly March 24th, which feels very late considering it was like early March last year. So I don't know, we'll see about that because the temperatures look really great from now on. I am going to treat the garden with caution still. We're going to still be prepared. I'm not taking down the frost cloths or anything, putting them away for the season, but I'm going to be optimistic and I'm starting a lot of spring seeds. So we'll just go ahead without further ado and we'll go check out the garden. Starting off back here, these two beds are basically the same. I have a couple of cabbages in each. They did just fine during the freeze, so they're just chugging along. These are the ones I planted a little late, so they might not actually produce anything, but that's okay. I put them in the ground anyway, and then I've got all of these cover crops, which surprisingly did survive. Yes, hi, bud. So the one that's most notable here, I would say, is this one. Doesn't really look like much, but down in there, see, yeah, if you can see that a little bit, that is actually a daikon radish. This one is probably ready to harvest, honestly. We kind of just saw it poking out one day on a different one in one of these two beds, and we pulled it up and ate it, and it was absolutely delicious. So we'll be doing that again in the near future for sure. Next to it here, just sort of following Nutmeg's lead, this is my pepper bed, or it is every summer, but there's not much left. A lot of things kind of died off, unfortunately. I don't know if this sweet alyssum is going to come back. There's a little bit in here that looks maybe alive, maybe a little bit here, but for the most part, it died. It can only tolerate a light freeze, really, so I wasn't too surprised about it. The chives here are doing great. Yes, hello, sweetheart. He just wants to check in. Good boy. So the chives did really well there. Over there, I had more chives, and they died. Next to them here, this was my first row of leeks that I'm putting in for the spring season. They did absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with them here. I even had two really teeny tiny leeks that I put in right before the freeze, actually, and they're doing just fine. The last thing to note in this bed would be my blue salvia. It's pretty much died back, so anything that was sort of big on it before died off, and we've gotten down to this new regrowth period here, which is totally fine. Next to it here, I kind of just am using this to put all of the mulch that I had during the freeze because I have nothing in this bed currently, so there's not much to report with that bed there. Nutmeg is just standing guard watching the bird feeder. Next to it over here, this is my herb bed. This is the first herb bed, I guess, of two. The other one's over there. This one fared much better. Every single plant in here is fine, even this bronze fennel. I know some of these leaves look damaged here, but there is beautiful new growth right here coming out. So I think that plant will be just fine. This sage is not doing the best. This one took the freeze a lot harder than the purple one did. So that is what it is, but I think it'll make a comeback anyway. If not, they're very cheap to replace. So overall, I'm very happy with this bed. The borage and the parsley are doing great. The oregano, right on the edges of it, there are some damaged pieces. All of this that turned brown and is just like coming right off. That all died because of the freeze, but this plant is massive anyway, so I'm not going to complain about that at all. This was the one bed that I actually ended up leaving uncovered, and it got snowed on because we did get a little bit of snow, but it's okay. I don't think that this plant is dead. this all feels pretty much and looks pretty much alive. Here I have a pink salvia, just for ornamental reasons back there, that's doing fine. I have an Astra who just wants to say hi. Yes, I know, you're wiggling like a little worm. I have Rue that survived. I really didn't think this was going to survive at all, but it somehow did. And we got down to the teens, so that is very impressive. And then I have Hyssop in the back that survived barely, but I wasn't expecting that to survive either. Next to it, we're gonna have some of the biggest fails of my garden for this freeze, and this one I was not expecting, especially since I covered it with that right there. And that is my Swiss chard. I purposely have not sort of chopped anything back yet, just because I wanted to show you the damage that was done. After I film this video, I'm probably going to get to work in here first, though it smells really bad because of all of this rotted chard. I thought at first it was completely dead, but I do see some new growth that looks okay here. So I'm hoping if I can chop everything else back, like this is just not going to make it. If I chop all of this back, maybe we'll have a comeback with this chard. It is unfortunate. I wasn't expecting it to go, so I didn't pick any of it. In the future, I guess I will harvest it before freeze, but man, this is pretty disappointing. While it is not technically dead, I am losing a lot of crop that I was planning on eating in the next coming weeks. So that is a disappointment. The asparagus here is supposed to die back either way, so not too mad about that. It should come back in the spring. Next to it over here is the biggest disappointment of all, and that is my artichokes. They did not handle this freeze well whatsoever, and it's a real shame because now I have to cut them back and basically start them over, whereas as you can see here, I was about to get my first ever artichoke. I have been waiting 1.5 years now to get a single artichoke out of these plants, and finally, I guess they were tricked into thinking that we were in spring when technically this is still winter, and it was giving me an artichoke. So now I'm going to have to be set back a few months. At the end of the day, they're just plants, and with a few months setback, I can still get artichokes in the late spring. But it's really disappointing because I was so excited about that little artichoke that was growing. And I'll just show you really close up again one more time. That was probably about halfway along, so just very disappointing overall. My tarragon also might be dying back. The rue and the oregano over there are doing fine. The fennel is doing okay, kind of like the other bronze fennel. And this milkweed died, but we knew that was going to happen, so major disappointment with the artichokes. This combined with the Swiss chard are the two biggest fails that you're going to see here, and it's just really heartbreaking for me because I was really looking forward to them, but it's really not the end of the world. The plants aren't dead, so I guess that is okay. Here is my root vegetable turned carrot bed. You guys would know that I let some carrots go to seed, and this is the result, and they did just fine. There's a little bit of leaf damage, some yellowing. They might look a little flapped over, but they did just fine. I honestly probably didn't even need to cover them. They're just chugging along. I have been picking some from time to time. They're doing great. I kind of try to pick the ones that are close together so that it leaves room for more to grow. I still have a scallion over here, which I think is funny. I just never harvested it. But, oh, I have two or three. They're all growing together, but they're ready. I honestly should harvest them soon, but that's the only other thing I have in this bed that is not a carrot. So not too much to report with them here. They're just doing fine. They're doing absolutely fine, and I don't need to do anything to this. I'm just trying to thin this out and eat as many carrots as I can because I want to put in a row of celery. I would love to put in maybe other root vegetables for the spring and summer, even though I have some over in that bed right there, but that's kind of all I have to report there. Here with my kale bed, it's kind of a mixed bag. There is some damage. This is all frost damage right here. All of this here that was up touching the frost cloth, that is all damage from the cold, but the plants are fine. They honestly just need a trim, and they're going to be just fine. There was a little bit of damage on the sage, if I can find my words. There was some damage to that. Here is some more damage to my beautiful dinosaur kale. This was the new plant. It fared, I think, okay, but the damage is there. It's still substantial enough, so that's just gonna go back into the soil. There's some damage to my starburst kale as well. There was a little bit of damage this time. It kind of changed color to this more burgundy color, so I think a lot of these leaves are going to die off, but it's not dead. It will make a comeback in the spring. All of this new growth down here was fine, so I guess that is what the plant was prioritizing. The strawberries as well, they're doing fine, not too much to report on them. And then my little rhubarb did okay. Not the best, because I had just planted it in here right before the freeze, but it's alive, and that's something to be grateful for. So if you look at this angle, the kale looks so weird. You can kind of see the strange growth pattern that kale has, but other than that, this bed did okay, and everything's alive, so I can be grateful for that. At one point, I thought with this bed that all of my broccoli had died because I was digging through here during the freeze harvesting leeks, and I couldn't find the broccoli plants. But I'm happy to report that they are doing okay. They are definitely behind schedule. I did not get them into the ground soon enough during the fall to be harvesting broccoli right now, which is what I should be doing. But this one is doing all right. So maybe between this one's kind of big too. This leaf got eaten by something during the freeze. Something was hungry. But between those two, those are the bigger ones. I'm hoping maybe even if I can get something as small as a broccolini during the spring, maybe that'll be all right. I do have a couple of small leeks in here as well. I'm waiting for them to size up a little bit more before I harvest them. But other than that, everything survived in this bed, and it was really funny trying to sort of dig through here to harvest leeks during the cold front. Over here, this bed I had completely cleared out and I did not cover. The only thing that was really alive in here was this yarrow. All of the flowers died off during the freeze, which is fine. I wasn't even expecting flowers over the winter. There's a lot of new growth underneath here. And then I have covered this with dirt because I just harvested all of the potatoes out of my grow bag last night. You can see here, this was one of my starter potatoes. So it was growing. I harvested all of the tomatoes off of the sides of these things. This is sort of what it looks like when you harvest the potatoes. Somewhat similar to sweet potatoes, but not totally the same. So that had all been harvested, and I needed to fill in this bed with something different than the tomato dirt that was in here. So I just filled that up, and I'll be getting new dirt for the grow bag to start in a couple weeks, my potatoes. I also forgot I didn't cover this bed at all. So this is my garlic. Nothing covered it. It's supposed to freeze, so everything survived. I was really shocked that they didn't die back at all, but they do need the chill hours, so I'm very happy with how that went and how everything survived in here. Finally, the last long skinny bed in this row, I have my cabbages. These are my much bigger ones. They are doing a lot better. They are a lot farther along. They are starting to kind of, I don't even know what you would call it, head up. They're starting to grow those little cabbage heads. They are still behind. I've seen a lot of people already harvesting cabbages here on gardening YouTube. I'm just behind. I'm figuring it out. It's really hard when you have warmer winters here. I feel like they're struggling right from the start because it's so hot, and then it gets really too cold, and then it gets hot again, like it's over 70 degrees today. So I'm just trying to do the best that I can. I'm sure in a different climate I could grow these better. I haven't attempted cabbages before, so I thought, why not? And I'm most hopeful about these to do something. They survived the freeze just fine. I kept them well covered. They were a bit squished, but they have since kind of branched back out and gotten their life back, I guess you could say, and they're doing pretty well. Next to them here, these are my bok choy, and then of course my favorite rosemary plant that I did specially cover. I put extra covering over that plant because if no other plant made it, I really wanted this plant to survive. I just love the way that it grows compared to my other rosemary over there, and it just kind of produces new shoots easily that I harvest from frequently. But the bok choy, at one point, I was checking on a couple things during the cold front, and I thought these had all died. It looked like they were completely rotted, but I guess it was just a defense mechanism of the leaf to sort of hold that moisture and not end up dying at all or freezing. So these mid-sized ones, this was my second round of bok choy that I put in. They are doing wonderfully. This plant is absolutely gorgeous. I love how beautiful it is. No pest pressure at all, which is really nice to see. This one is doing pretty well. Just the same, it's not quite as big as this one, but that's totally okay. I did harvest one of my big ones already. You can see that was the cut that I made. It was much prettier than this one. This one got hit by some weird pest pressure pretty early on. I don't see the pests here anymore, as I did spray it with the Monterey BT, but I'm waiting for it. I could harvest it now. I'm just concerned because these leaves I don't really want to eat if I can avoid it, and it's growing some nicer new leaves here. So once it gets a few more sets of leaves, I'll go ahead and harvest that one as well. And then I have a couple of really itty bitty baby bok choy here. I had planted these just before the freeze and they are doing so well. They're so cute. These were the ones that I thought were completely dead, but they had me fooled and they are doing very well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get another round of these into the ground soon, but for now, these are all doing very well. Right behind it, this is sort of a hybrid bed here. I mostly wanted to get my collards into the ground here, but I knew I was going to have some more room. So with you, I planted this garlic in here when I had extra garlic. The collards did fine as I expected. They can tolerate much colder temperatures, I think, than what we had. So they all look gorgeous. This one is definitely ready to harvest. These leaves are so much bigger than my hand, so no worries about the collards at all. The one unfortunate thing that I'll show here and in another bed is my peas. They were not happy about the cold. They got squished by the blankets I put up, and I do have some that are coming back. This one has a second shoot out of this plant that was here, and it's doing really well. I have little side shoots coming out from the bottom of this one here, and so these are doing a bit better than some of the ones on the other beds, and that's why I'm holding out on ripping these out right now, because I'm waiting for all of these side shoots to pop out. They're just a lot thinner of a plant in general, so they're not going to be quite as hold hardy as something like a collard green would be. So in a way, I was expecting it, but it is still disappointing given that they were just starting to flower and produce, and I have now been set back by quite a few months. Next to it over here, I have my fennel. I harvested my biggest one right before the freeze, and I'm very glad I did, just given how sort of squished these got with all of the weight of the blankets that I put over them. I am delightfully surprised about my new green that I am trying out called Komatsuna. I got it as a free seed from Baker Creek Seeds, and it did very well in the cold. I had properly insulated it without squishing it by using the aspen fibers. You'll see some right here that I got from a local plant nursery, and it was just really nice and airy so that it didn't get squished, but it also insulated it very well from the cold. I know these are cold hardy. I just don't know how cold hardy they are, but clearly temperatures in the teens didn't seem to bother them too much, and they're doing very well. I also have my broccoli rabe right at the edge of the bed here. That did very well in the cold as well. It got a little bit more squished, so the older leaves weren't very happy with me, but these newer leaves are doing just fine. And that's sort of a trial run plant that I'm growing for the first time, so I'm not too concerned what happens to it either way, but I am surprised delightfully that it did survive the winter, I guess the freeze that we had. And I do want to point out this one radish that I have here. This came from seeds from my mom, and she doesn't grow white radishes. She grows black Spanish radishes and just regular red ones, but I have a white one here. So I know it's not a daikon because the leaf shape is not the same. It's not the same color as a daikon. So I'm very interested, just to kind of point that out, I'm interested to try that and harvest it and kind of see what it tastes like, because that is something I haven't experienced before. Moving on to the last two raised beds here. This had my fall tomatoes. They're completely dead. There's nothing left of them here. This is just completely squished up. And then you can see these were where the peas really started to take a hit. This one is probably dead. I'll probably chop it back all the way down here just because it fared so poorly. But I do have the savory, which survives literally everything, honestly. And I have my adorable little kohlrabi. So they did very well in the freeze. A couple leaves got squished, but they didn't really get any damage other than being a little bit squished by the frost blankets, and they're faring very well. They're starting to size up. Hopefully we'll get some bulbs on them soon, but they do pretty well into the spring, into some warmer temperatures, so I'm not going to worry about them too much in terms of pest pressure. Try saying that 5 times fast. And I'm also not worried because you don't really eat the leaves anyway. You want to eat them for the nice bulbs that they'll provide in a couple months. So I'm very happy with how that turned out. And then finally, back here, I've got my root veggie bed for the winter. And this is what was really disappointing because these were so tall, so big and beautiful, and they're all toast. I already sowed some new seeds in here just to get a head start on that. But everything else in this bed did fine. Again, a few plants got squished because I had some heavy blankets, and I did put the pine needles. That's from our Christmas tree, by the way. I put that all in here. So that squished a few things. They're starting to sort of fill out now. You can see this guy got squished a bit, but these are all pretty cold hardy plants anyway, being root vegetables. The soil never really got frozen in this bed. It did on the smaller beds in the back. The soil froze in there because that's where I was getting the leaks, but in here it didn't. So everything here did fairly well. I've even got these teeny tiny little scallions. I have some baby parsnips that had just sprouted right before the freeze. They're all doing fine. I have my larger parsnips here. These are all radishes. And then this also was from a seed from my mom. We've been laughing about this for a while. I planted it with all of the radish seeds, and it's a bok choy. It was just mixed up in with all of these, and it just ended up being a bok choy, which is funny because I know my mom saved seeds from her bok choy as well, and they look very similar. So one just kind of got mixed up with the rest, which is totally fine. I love bok choy, so I'm not complaining about it. It just looks like an odd duck in this bed with all of the other produce. Finally, we're gonna go to my seed starting area, but I wanted to show off that Nutmeg has taken a liking to sitting on the moving blankets that we use for frost protection. A lot of them got soaked because we had a few storms after the freeze was over, so we were drying them off on the back patio, and Nutmeg said, no, you can keep them here. I really like laying on this, so wanted to just show that he's having a good time out here. But moving on to the final part of the garden, and that is my seedling table. The seedlings were all obviously inside, so they are doing well. So this is more just going to be an update about them. We planted these tomato seeds last week in my seed starting video. They have not sprouted yet. It's only been a few days really, so not worried about that at all. I do have a little leek coming up right in there, so that is exciting. I need to get this celery and this bok choy into the ground because they are more than ready. I have a couple of determinate tomatoes back here. That one on the right did get damaged by the cold. We had some winds and it fell over, and it got a bit damaged right before I moved them inside. So it's recovering a bit. We've got some new flowers starting up, and then the other one there has a tomato on it, which I find to be hilarious that I am growing a tomato in January. This was a nasturtium I started from seed, but I'm waiting until March to put this one in the ground. The dill, I might wait, I don't know, I might wait till the 1st of March on this one as well, just because I don't quite know how cold hardy that one is. The dragon fruit cuttings that I have are doing fairly well. I've got a lot of new growth on here. They did not mind being in my garage for a week. The lemongrass, this one I think did die. This one is still holding on. It did not appreciate being in the garage, but that's okay. I also have these peppers that I've started in this new method this spring. I'm gonna see if it works. I have struggled to grow peppers from seed in the past year or two, so I'm just seeing if this will work better, because the sooner I can get the peppers started, the better, because I love peppers and they're not as heat tolerant. So I'm trying this new method, giving them a little bit more insulation, a little bit more humidity, and trying a new propagation method. I'm trying to propagate my rosemary that I was gushing about earlier, so we'll see if that works. But I am more so excited about the peppers, and I'm hoping it goes well. If it does, I will report back in kind. Other than that, I've got a few pots that I brought back out. These were peppers that I was planning to grow in the fall. It just didn't work out because it got cold by the time they got big enough to put in the ground. So I decided to grow them over the winter, and they've been doing very well. So I will at least have a head start on these. If this is something that works versus starting them in the spring, because in our fall it is pretty warm here, I will just go ahead and do this for the foreseeable future while I'm living in Texas, because this plant is very healthy. This one I started a little bit later, so it's a bit smaller, but either way, this is a huge head start on the spring season. I'm also waiting on my swallowtail caterpillars still. They're all in the chrysalis. I think I have 4 of them here. So I've got one down there, I've got one up here, and I have 2 in here that I'm waiting on. Hopefully they will hatch in March when we are out of the frost window, but whenever nature decides they're ready is when we'll do it. I have a couple peppers here I'm trying to overwinter as well. This one's doing the best. This is my Mucho Nacho Jalapeno. They got a little bit cold. My husband accidentally smushed this one, so it's not doing very well. It did get a little bit too cold in the garage for some things, so this African blue basil lost all of its leaves. We'll see if it comes back. I think it might, just because it looks like there's new growth down there. But other than that, that's sort of everything that I'm growing in the pots and in the seedling table. So that is it for our garden tour today. I am going to be very busy, as you can see, getting to work with all of the plants out here. I have a lot of trimming to do, a lot of seeds to start, a lot of ground to prepare, some mulch to buy, all the good things for the spring. But I'm excited about it. I'm ready. I'm very much ready for spring. I'm over the cold. I am loving this warm weather, and I hope that it is here to stay. But I'm hoping that next month the garden will look drastically different and a lot better than this month. This is probably one of the lowest points of the garden, but I'm trying to stay optimistic about it because I'm excited for spring and I'm ready. And I know that the garden is going to look great this year. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give Nutmeg and I here a thumbs up down below and subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here on the channel. Thanks again, and we will catch you in the next one.